Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Snapshot, episode 88. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by Marvel Snap Phenom, Cam Best. Cam, your week in Marvel Snap, sir.
Bit of a confusing one. It's hard for me to figure out what the best deck is. I think this is a metagame where it's like, I almost feel like we might be in a holding pattern going into Madam Web. But then I think, they pre-nerfed Taskmaster, so maybe she's not going to be that good. Maybe I don't need to be worried that much about move bounce. I get a lot of questions that are like, Cam, should I buy Wiccan? Should I buy Ajax? Should I buy Mockingbird? And I don't know, because not only is there an OTA coming on the 13th, Madam Web, and then Aranya on the 11th and the 18th, I believe, respectively. So, we're recording this on the 8th, and in the next 10 days, there are going to be 3 potentially game-changing things happening. It's just very hard for me to recommend anything right now because of how, I guess, context-driven the current Marvel Snap metagame is. There are these big... I feel like most metagames are defined by the cards that say this is what you can't do that are played the most. In this metagame, that's Sandman and Eliath. And so those are the constraints you have to work within for what people are playing right now. But I have no idea how relevant that's going to be in 2 weeks at all.
And are any part of those OTAs public or leaked or anything like that? No. You don't.
Not
the
even
guy,
to
the
me.
guy didn't get back.
Not
to you?
even to me. No. The leaker is like some dude on Twitter, basically.
Okay.
So I'll know about that when you know about that.
They found the rat. They got him.
I don't have any special sauce on this
He
one.
was
You
wearing
know what I mean?
a wire. Yeah, I would love to see a second dinner drama, like a Sopranos episode at Second Dinner where they kind of round people up and figure out who's been leaking the OTAs.
Yeah,
they just take them out back.
I mean, Occam's razor to me is based on the timing they come out. That there were multiple sources. Some were probably from the creator program, and some were probably from localization teams, and that would be my logical guess. But
they sit down with Glenn. They're like, it's someone in your inner circle. God damn it.
I don't want to turn this into Among Us. It's like the worst thing about this is every time anything leaks, it's just the whole community goes full Amogus, and it's just like, oh my god, can we just move past it?
Kind of the best thing about it too. Anyway, we had a new season come out. It means 2 new cards. First one is Symbiote Spider-Man 4/6. Activate merger lowest cost card here with this. Copy its text like it just revealed. How'd it land?
I feel like this card landed relatively well in the sense that it is a card a lot of people are trying in a lot of spots, but I think people are trying it mostly in spaces where it is dragging the deck down or is not the optimal 12th card in the deck. Exceptions to this include, I am fairly certain it is just absolutely a beast mode card in Phoenix Force. That's just, it is a card in that deck now forever. And
do you know what card it replaced?
Decks,
By chance?
Iron Lad.
Okay.
It's just an easy call because it's just Shuri too, right? Just extremely easy call there. And so that's like a guaranteed lock it in, that is where it goes. In every other deck, it feels like it's getting dealt with in meaningful ways because a lot of what it's multiplying is on reveal effect. Eliath, obviously very good against stuff that's trying to do that. Eliath, a very popular card. A lot of Symbiote Spider-Man is also sort of wrapped up in making sure that you get some value off of it. And that requires building your deck in certain ways that may not be optimal right now. And I think the third thing I've noticed really is there are a lot more just decks playing Cosmo as the tech slot because of SSM.
That makes sense. Maybe something that will kind of cool off a bit as we progress in the weeks. But it's hard to even talk about Marvel Snap like that because I feel like that's a reasonable statement to say for any other card game. But in the context of Snap, it's like new card next week, OTA, new card, and it's like, okay, well, all of the context changes, not just this. So yeah,
it's always moving.
It's a quickly evolving game.
So right now, I think that you could reasonably describe him as a bit of a miss on power level would be the way I would describe it. He's a little low on power level, but I don't know how much of that is just people are playing him in the wrong stuff, right? Where it's if you look at the untapped stats, infinite top 10%, he's a 48.6% win rate card with a negative -0.01 cube rate and a 20.3% popularity, right? Would those numbers be better if his popularity was 10% and people weren't running a bunch of Cosmos and a bunch of Elias and stuff like that? Is this a card that has potential and released in a bad meta, or is this the Grandmaster 2 Electric Boogaloo?
Silver Sable 1/1 on reveal, steal 2 power from the top card of your opponent's deck. I feel like this is one we're pretty excited for.
Yeah, and she's actually just great.
Yeah.
Just actually great. Just a generically strong 1-drop who gets boosted even further in bounce. I got some more stats for you. Infinite top 10%, 52.7% win rate, 31.8% popularity, plus 0.17 cubes. Just stellar. Big part of why bounce makes sense right now, and almost looks to justify the beast nerf in retrospect.
Okay. Do you think, I mean, does she overperform anywhere else except bounce, or is bounce, or let's not say overperform. She overperforms in bounce. Like, how serviceable is she in other archetypes?
Perfectly.
Okay.
If you are playing a Wiccan deck that wants like 3 or 4 1-drops, she can be one of those 1-drops easily.
Cool. All right, well, let's head into the Bend and Snap. It's our listener question section. You want your question read on or on next week's podcast? You can shoot us Bro, it's like the end of my sentence just interjected in the middle. I was like, what the fuck are you doing there?
Yeah, because the end of the sentence, that is exactly what happened. It, like, looped.
Hello, brain. Shoot us a comment on YouTube. We'll get a queued up. First one comes from me. What are you thinking about this UFC in the Dome? UFC 306. We got our main card, Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili.
Nice.
What are your thoughts? I mean, I'm thinking interesting header for that card because, you know, it's a big event. You know, they put it in the Dome. This is going to be a big thing. I'm excited to see it for the main fight. But then I look down the card a bit. And I don't get particular. I mean, I think I've seen fight nights that I got more. It's not that I'm not excited, but I look at like which one really sticks out to me. Brian Ortega,
Sure.
Diego Lopez. Diego definitely a savage, but I would argue maybe a mismatch. Like Diego Lopez looking a little strong, I think these days. I don't think that Brian Ortega is going to be much of a fight.
That's crazy. You really think that?
Yeah, maybe I'm definitely fading him. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely fading Brian Ortega, but Diego Lopez looking unstoppable these days. Also, worst tattoo in the UFC for sure.
That's no way.
It's
You can't just say
you can't say
anyone has the worst tattoo in the UFC. You have to do like a comprehensive survey because every time you think you've seen the worst tattoo in the UFC, there's another guy who has a worse tattoo. And like, I don't think you can reasonably like when people think of bad UFC tattoos, like Brock Lesnar's dick sword is like super up there.
Infinitely cooler than Diego Lopez's chest tattoo. What does it say? Dream, believe, and make it happen. And it's fucking massive. And it's also like you can't really read it the first time. So you're like, what is that? Like, what is that on there? And then you read it and you're like, oh shit.
I just think that like if there's a population of people that are like predisposed to have bad tattoos, UFC fighters are definitional those guys.
Yo, sometimes they make it through. You know, they don't start getting them until they get the money, but then sometimes it's the other way around. It doesn't work out. What do you think about that entire card though? Like, do you think this warrants the dome?
You mean the sphere?
Yeah, I mean sphere.
You're calling it the dome this whole time, and I'm like, actually, that's only half of a sphere.
Okay.
You
want to know why?
Dome.
You want to know why? There is a pseudo sphere that opened near me in Texas. Sure. It's a dome actually. And it's just TVs. And so they will like give you the camera angle of like, you know, behind the behind one of the goal lines at an NFL event. They were putting on this thing where they said it was like Cirque du Soleil. And I remember, you know, my partner, we thought it was like actually Cirque du Soleil. We're going to buy tickets, $50. I was like, oh, by the way, it's a fucking video. I was like, what? So I was like, okay, getting past that, it might be cool to watch UFC 306 there. How much do you think the ticket costs? By the way, this is food not included, drinks not included. You get to sit at a high top bar.
Just like a big theater, basically.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess $150.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. You know, a little bit higher than the pay per view, and you know, you're still getting ripped off. $500. Unbelievable. Where do these suburban people get their money? Holy shit! It's just
in Texas. Like oil-related crimes, probably.
I guess. I mean, I'm near Dallas, so that's more like a blue collar crime. No, it's a is it blue collar? It's more
Yeah, no,
like
it's financial fraud.
yeah,
White
financial
collar
fraud,
crime.
more like that,
Yeah,
blue collar crime.
you get if you're doing no,
I
no,
got my
white collar.
collars mixed up there for a sec.
Blue collar crime is like when you like rob a liquor store.
Yeah.
White collar crime is when you defraud the parent company of that liquor store.
Yeah. So we're more on the white collar crime. That's who we got running around out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh my god, what a ripoff. Anyway, your thoughts, just the high level thoughts. You excited?
High level, I here's the thing. I have become a kind of massive Sean O'Malley fan, and
Me too,
as someone who has become a fan of Sean O'Malley, like I thought he would lose to Aljo. First of all, didn't.
yeah,
And now I think he's gonna lose to Marab, and it's like
bruh.
I really hope he's not, because like each time it's like every other. Here's the thing that really bugs me is every other like one of Dana's boys gets nothing but favorable matchups all the time, and Sean O'Malley gets like wrestler Cheeto Vera, who like that was a favorable matchup. Come on now, and then another guy with an infinite gas tank who's just gonna like wrestle him the entire time, and it's just like. Where's the matchmaking bias from Dana? That's like the thing he does the best is matchmaking bias for his boys. And it's just I don't like he's just throwing him into the meat grinder here, man. Come on.
We've talked about this, but I think one of my favorite fights of all time is Edmund Sherbazian versus
Derek Brunson. Yes! Plus money Brunson, baby.
Just whooped his ass. I mean,
I love that. I loved that plus money run from Brunson, where he was just actually like 4 or 5-0 as the underdog consecutively.
Do you remember when Marab stole Suga's jacket and was on top of the cage?
What was that? That was just such a weird thing.
He just looks so funny in that jacket.
There was a bit that I where Marab like earlier in his career, like he like broke his foot on some ice or whatever, like on a lake, and then posted an Instagram video of him hanging off of a branch and beating up the lake and just like punching the water.
Yeah, I'm not as much on social media anymore, but I've seen those Marab TikToks where he just gets just like they're very bizarre.
He's just it rocks. Like the UFC has such a high concentration of weirdest guy you've ever met in it, and this is a fight that is the perfect encapsulation of that. The weird thing about Sean O'Malley is he presents as the weirdest guy you've ever met, and then anytime he talks about anything, you're like, oh, he's just like a guy.
Yeah, and he comes off like sometimes he comes off kind of humbled too, and you're like, what the
fuck?
It's
just like, oh no, that's just like a guy. He's just like a guy who is playing a game. And then you look at Marab and you're like, that guy's actually crazy. that is a crazy person.
True infinite gas tank too. It's like very entertaining to watch sometimes. All right, well, let's go into our real Bend&Snap. First one comes from Cut CC. I had to 4 banging in the keys to get Silver Sable this week. Feels bad. I just want to see if there's anybody else here that wants to pour one out, commiserate, solidarity on 4 banging in the keys. Just a moment of silence. And there it is.
We should have let that go. That should have been the last bit of the podcast, and then we should have added like 40 minutes of silence to the end of the show.
Oh man, 4 banging the keys does not feel good.
Yeah,
you were telling me before you hopped on the podcast. You've seen this. You've seen this phrase out in the wild, actually.
I have seen this phrase in the wild, and like it's starting to freak me out. It's like because like I feel like we have made several contributions to the Marvel Snap lexicon that go unacknowledged. Right? 4 banging in the keys. Everyone calls Moon Knight Goon Knight now. You're welcome for that, Marvel Snap community. Arrow as Bayro. That was also me.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
We have contributed on this podcast to several really stupid things that probably make your day worse, and frankly I think that we deserve thank you for that.
Bruh. 4 banging in the keys needed some solidarity. We needed like a phrase to get behind, because that was it's a bad time.
We genuinely need to make merch of that, and I genuinely do want to theme it after like a Florida t-shirt.
4 banging in the keys. Yeah,
just like picture of a palm tree and a sunset. 4 banging in the keys.
Open
no one knows
offer.
What that means.
If you're like an artist and you want to get in on that, you got a cool idea, you let us know.
We have to pay them residuals though.
Yeah. You
Like
say what it is.
we have to give them. We'll have to give them a portion of the profits.
I will give
We
you a
can't just,
portion
like,
of
buy
my
the art.
booty coin holdings. No, for real.
No, like
Yeah,
actual
I know,
profit.
I know, I know.
Yeah, we can't pay them in booty coin, Brent.
God damn it! Come on. I thought
We gotta stop trying to pay
I've been getting away with
artists
this for too long.
Yeah, we gotta stop trying to pay artists in booty coin. We can't do it anymore.
All right, next one's from Zegum. They say, "What actually convinced me to play Marvel Snap was finding out what Jubilee, my favorite X-Men, did in the game. And so far, she's the card I played the most. Give me Jubilee Mastery. Is there a card? What card for you evokes the most, or like the best? I don't know. What would you say? What's the word? I was gonna say the most character or most flavor for the whatever it's supposed to represent.
Apocalypse, easy.
Okay.
The way he foreshadows himself,
Oh,
that's so sick. That's so sick. It's so clever. There are so many little clever things that like early Marvel Snap cards did that are just like that. Like every time I see them, I'm just like, that's so.
Galactus
good.
pretty dope though, blowing up the 2. Even though I know that people hate that, but
oh yeah,
yeah. Eliath, used to destroy the cards.
Eliath's original design is such a flavor win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's literally erasing them out of time. It's the biggest possible flavor win. It rocks. It's too bad it's like an unplayable game piece, but
Yeah, just gonna have to hard disagree there. But yeah, I like Thanos as well. I think Thanos is a little bit less creative, but it's cool that you play all the stones and then he he's souped up. I think that's dope.
I feel like I'm thinking about this a little bit. Scarlet Witch is a great
Heard that one
design.
mentioned before, yeah.
That's a really good one. I think a lot of like Squirrel Girl, obviously, like just home run, great job.
Which one's the worst?
There. Captain America and Patriot should be swapped.
Okay, maybe like these ones. I think it's kind of cheating to pick the vanilla ones, but like I know like Cyclops was one.
Yeah, that's cheating.
Really, really disappointed.
You can't pick a vanilla one.
Pick a vanilla. Okay.
You can't be like, oh, the flavor on this vanilla ice cream sucks. Fuck you. You ordered it. You can't.
That's all I got though. There
has to be more. There has to be more.
I'm just like I would have to know the original source material to say that something was good or bad. My sort of what I'm drawing on here is very limited.
Gwenpool kind of iffy, I think, flavor wise.
Okay. Deadpool pretty great flavor wise. Comes back.
Deadpool's pretty okay flavor wise.
More powerful.
Deadpool Wolverine good flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Gwenpool's like a reality warper, right? So I guess the flavor with her is she's warping reality to give your cards more power.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know.
Yeah. All right, next one's from Higher Darkness. Question: my favorite archetype, Move is my favorite archetype, and it's getting so many great additions. Do you guys think that Living Tribunal mixed with Move will be a thing when Madame Web releases?
Before the Taskmaster nerf, I would have said 100% no.
Okay.
100% no. After the Taskmaster nerf, I'm kind of wondering if like it actually just did the job, and now Move Bounce is going to be like good, playable, but not boss. Because it feels like to me, whenever I like cooked anything up in my head about that deck, a lot of it revolved around I have this force multiplier for something broken, right? Like, it's okay if you have one really big dumb idiot, right? That's fine. But when you have two really big dumb idiots, you win 2 lanes. And when you have 2 really big dumb idiots that you can't meaningfully interact with Shang-Chi and stuff like that because you're putting them in your hand, huge problem, right? And even like if one of those dumb idiots is a Human Torch and the other one is a Taskmaster and you have Eliath, you still have to get the Taskmaster lane right. Not the Human Torch. If you hit the Human Torch lane, it doesn't matter. That guy's already got all of his power. And that was the dynamic that really scared me about Madame Web. I do wonder if that nerf has made me, like, or to what degree that nerf has made me like, oh, I'm way less scared now. I don't know. My instinct is that it will still be able to create a lot of numbers, but that it will be the kind of deck that can create a lot of numbers and be interacted with, which is fine. As long as you can force the deck to not be a full, all my points are coming out on turn 6, fine, I'll live with it. And so, long story short, previously I would have said 100% no to Tribunal. Now I don't actually know. It depends on how good they are at scale.
All right. Next question is from me. I'm letting the intrusive thoughts out here. But what's your favorite like lore universe of all time? I mean, there's probably a better word for that, but like,
Yeah, what do you like?
so
my
like,
favorite-
what would be like that? So like Marvel's one. You could say that
Oh,
the Cosmere is one. You could say that the
oh,
Souls lore is one. You could say that. So the reason I ask is I saw Alien Romulus. It's
mhm.
pretty. I liked it. It was
Yeah.
it was good. It was really. I mean, it was way better than I expected. And I went back and I hadn't seen Prometheus yet, and I watched that, and that was actually pretty decent. And then I watched Alien Covenant. I was like, that one was not that good. I was like, actually, but then I watched one of those YouTube 2-hour videos on the lore. And it was pretty sick lore. I liked it. It's like it wasn't my favorite of all time, but I was wondering if you had one just in the chamber ready to go.
I am a big Souls lore guy, but I think if you forced me to name one, I would say probably Elder Scrolls.
Okay. Okay, there's some great YouTube videos on that. Some long form.
I am like I have concealed my power level well. Let's put it that way. Like if you think that I need to watch videos about either scrolls or like, I can have those conversations with the people that made the video. I am very very aware of way too much stuff in both of those spaces.
Your source
Taking up
material is
blocks.
playing the game and doing sort of like
No,
in-depth
my
research.
source material is forums
There we
dedicated
go.
to them.
Yeah.
Like this is like I lurk on multiple Elder Scrolls lore and Elder Scrolls lore shitposting subreddits. Like like I've gone very far down that rabbit hole, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, next one's from Aaron Grace. They say 4 banging the keys this week for Silver Sable. Also, should I pick up Ajax or Sasquatch with keys?
It's the exact
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
That's why I
was like, yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. It's like asking if someone should buy something the week before a potential Aerishem release. Like,
Or like, hey, I heard that there's this new booty coin card game coming out. Should I buy before it comes out?
yeah,
When do I sell?
You should always invest in booty coin, but not the booty coin that actually exists. Our hypothetical booty coin 2, which is right. It's much better,
and we're all gonna hold it till we're all rich.
Yes,
and it's
that
gonna
is a
work
plan
out.
that has no logical flaws in it.
No, absolutely not. No logical flaws.
Don't look down at this rug under your feet.
Yeah.
I promise I will not pull it.
Yeah, we're in this together until I'm out of it. Then you guys are fucked.
You gotta.
All right, next one is from Tech Guy. On the Discord, they confirmed Symbiote Spider-Man won't allow an activated card to activate again, which lead me to believe that bouncing an activated card won't allow it to be activated again either. If I recall, people, yeah. So that was obviously in relation to our earlier talk. As someone
I was pretty sure.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure.
Yeah.
I feel like once again, history has absolved me. I am on the right side of history.
Yeah, for sure. Next, okay, listen to this from JLed. I legendarily 8 banged in the keys for a silver sable variant. Can you believe that? Who's fucking banging in the keys for variants anyway? But the 8 bang.
Oh my god! I feel like if you're investing in
you're rich.
variant,
You're rich.
Yeah, you don't get to complain about this. This is like 4 banging in the keys. I don't even get to complain about 4 banging in the keys.
Yeah.
Like if you're going, I don't even go for variants. If you're going for variants, I mean either you're broke and you do get to complain about this because you have very poor decision making skills, or you have no ability to complain about this at all.
I feel like it's the latter, but I was like, damn, bro. I can't imagine 8 banging in the keys. That's just
crazy.
Straight to retirement. All right. Next one, Gungrave. What are some ways they could rework Zabu?
Everyone was like losing their mind about an activate Zabu, but every time I think about activate Zabu, I'm like, isn't that kind of busted? Like, isn't like the whole thing that this card had was that it was a problem when you could just make it happen whenever, and like the 2 specific turns it was a problem were turn 2 and turn 5. And so you make him an activate Zabu, and then it means he's just always going to be turn 5 because you play him on turn 2 and you can't activate him, and so he's just like a 2/3 that gives you 2 energy discounts on turn 5. And then it's like, okay, is that any different from what he is now? And in order to facilitate it mattering on turn 2, do you then make him a 1-drop, and then is he broken? And the answer is like, I can't think of a good shape for activate.
Are there any cards in the game that stop cards from activating?
No.
That would be interesting if you had maybe a bit boring design if you had a card just stop cards from activating, but it'd be cool if you could drop a Zabu on turn 1, and there was maybe some counterplay going into turn 5 as you go to activate. I don't know, something like I don't know how that would play out with like how activates work in this game with asymmetric or with symmetric turns. Probably wouldn't at all, but I digress.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't think of a good shape for activate Zabu that doesn't feel risky to me, because I think the biggest thing about Zabu is like it's not his fault, but what he enables is gameplay that everyone kind of hates.
Yeah.
Like the cards everyone always complains about are the cards that define the outline of a metagame that tell you what you can and can't do. Right now that's Sandman and Eliath, but when Zabu is good, it's Enchantress and Shang-Chi, right? All of this stuff that everyone kind of hates, Zabu enables that just because they happen to be at the energy cost effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it's not super safe to do that, because now you also have like, let's say you do get activate Zabu, right? And like that's cool and that's awesome and all that. I don't know why you'd work on investing in a card that is so liable to create those issues, as opposed to just making cards that people actually that will like play the way people want to play the game.
Yeah. OG Zabu meta was my least favorite meta of all time, actually. Surprisingly.
Not unreasonable.
Yeah.
Probably because you couldn't Galactus anybody, because you could only play one place on the final turn of the game.
I feel like you can only play one deck, and then I mean maybe there was 2 decks. I think there was a Shuri deck at that time as well.
Nah, Surfer was actually, by the numbers, Surfer was a better deck.
Yeah. Man.
I believe Glenn Jones.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's a somewhat reliable source.
Mm-hmm.
Next one's from Low-High. Bend&Snap. In my opinion, Daredevil is the best underutilized card in Marvel Snap. What are some of your guilty pleasure off-meta cards, or ones you feel people sleep on?
Is Pixie Mobius an acceptable answer?
I would think
I'm always higher on Pixie Mobius than every other good player, because I just like having Mobius in my deck, and Pixie comes along with him a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that acceptable? Because like a lot of my I don't play things that are bad, so I don't really know if I have pet cards that way. My pet cards are the cards that are good, right? So among good cards, I feel like Pixie Mobius might be an example. Beast is something close to that. Kate Bishop is something close to that, but they're also all probably too good, right? Like,
yeah.
I can't think of like an actively bad card that I'm like, oh, I'm excited to be able to play this.
Not slipping in the Howard the Duck or the Uatus.
It's not my bag. It's just not my bag. I don't. Maybe Captain Marvel, but I don't think she counts as actively bad either. You know?
Yeah, I think you'd have to take off the chains of actively bad.
Yeah.
Like a card that I sometimes slot in the decks is Nico. But
yeah, but she's amazing.
I know. But you know, sometimes she's not in the deck, and then I slot her in, and boom, deck building brewing over here. Be careful.
I guess if you want like an actively bad card that I kind of do think of as like a pet card, High Evo might be the guy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that checks out. For me, I mean, I guess you could also throw Galactus under there, but I don't really play that much Galactus anymore, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but like that's the same issue, right? He's not that good.
Yeah, he's not that good.
Yeah,
it doesn't evoke the same things for me anymore. You know, it doesn't.
You don't get the same feeling of power.
Yeah, I'm not. My opponents are not miserable enough. There's too much counterplay.
Yeah.
It's too interactive.
Yeah.
Haven't been fully locked out.
Wait, I've got a Bend and Snap for you.
Okay.
I read the ban announcements for Flesh and Blood.
Oh, yeah, that was wild. Yeah, so they banned all the fun cards. Nah.
They banned a lot of
Probably
shit.
Probably a good idea, but yeah.
I was struck by how thoughtful their approach to power creep was.
That's just Brian. Yeah, I mean, well, that's the ethos of Flesh and Blood. That's also worded via. I mean, technically it said it was written by James, but I couldn't help but think that there was some Brian Gottlieb influence on that article. It's just very empathetic.
The other thing, though, that I was struck by was they were very explicit. Like, look, we're getting rid of this shit for future health of the format.
Yeah.
And when Marvel Snap tried to do that, Taskmaster, people were like, you've never done this before. How dare you do it? And I guess I'm wondering, like, Is this a presentation issue? Is this an audience issue? Are the
Yeah.
people that play Flesh and Blood just like better at understanding that this shit matters?
Well, I
More
think that
experienced card gamers. What
Legendary
is it?
Studios is much more tyrannical than Second Dinner is. Like, Legendary Studios has this air of that they don't really give a fuck about what this one little person on Twitter that's potentially complaining things, or that even like a collective at a point like Flesh and Blood has been wrong in the past. They've stuck to their guns. They've also been wrong, and they've apologized for it, and they made it better. But I think ultimately Flesh and Blood has this air of like that the creator and sort of the sub creators now, whether that's Gottlieb or the dev team, like that they do know what's best. It's not they don't listen to players, but they do have a strong. You can sense that they have a strong belief in themselves, that they plan to drive the ship, not the community. I think Flesh and Blood players submit themselves to that, and that's not off the back of faith. That's off the back of gameplay. So after experiencing good gameplay for so long, they will, rather than immediately, and I'm sure there's plenty on Twitter that do have the knee-jerk reaction of, fuck this is terrible, etc. But in general, the general community does tend to just say, okay, I don't know, that's a lot, that's a huge decision, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, because like I was struck by like how little elaboration they gave on that. They were just like, look, this card takes up too much design space. It was a mistake to make, and we've got to get.
Well, the thing is like a lot of those cards are they're not really problems right now. They just so basically they banned an area of game design in their game. So that was drawing additional, for the most part, if you could sum it up then and parse it into words that every card gamer would understand, it's effectively drawing additional cards, card advantage. And so they were going to basically take all of that out of the game because it breaks the tenets of where the game is balanced. They outline that in the article. It just fundamentally breaks the sense. Even if it's not broken right now. What's funny, though, is there's a combo deck, a Kano combo deck that's my favorite deck to play. And there's this new wizard set coming out. And there's just cards where it's like, okay, that's clearly fucking busted in Kano. So this is not going to... Kano is going to... I think they're going to ban the combo card, which is Aether Wildfire. And everybody's like, it's going to suck. Our combo deck's going to be gone. Our big damage, kill you in one turn is going to be gone. And they're like, nope, we're not going to ban the combo card. We're just going to ban all the enablers that actually make your deck fun. It was like, the whole Kano Twitter was just down bad. Like, down
I've
bad.
got a question for you.
Mhm.
You talk about like good gameplay.
Yeah.
And in the article, they specifically mentioning like memorizing the order your deck in.
Yes, but what's funny is the example. The example they used was actually incorrect, which is it's the one part of the article that I have a big issue with, and it's actually mostly an accident, but it was a very like James, who I think wrote that part of the article, is fundamentally wrong on that. They talked about remembering the entire second cycle of your deck because you put cards back into your deck, and that being a cool thing. The cards they banned were the cards that allowed that strategy to happen, and by banning those cards, they actually banned that strategy effectively. So now the Kano strategy is more of like, oh, I've drawn the correct cards to combo right now, I just go off. Where it used to be like block, wait, stack my deck, get to my stack, turbo combo.
See, that's the thing that's crazy, is that someone looks at a game where like what you're doing is stacking your deck and memorizing the order so you can combo off.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, yeah, no, that rocks.
Well, you have a lot of agency. Both players have a lot of agency as that happens. So in order to stack your deck, you don't do it at zero cost. You have to pitch that card, which means that you don't use it to attack, and you also don't use it to defend at that point. So there's a large opportunity cost to making this happen.
Right, like the idea is basically like, but like what you're doing is
a deterministic outcome. Yeah.
Yes, like you're attempting to ride the line of not dying until you get to your deterministic combo kill.
Yes.
And it's like, is that the best way to put that into your game?
No. So determinism in any card game is almost objectively bad, right? Because one player must be held captive at that point while the other player has fun.
It's the thing you like, I get it.
Yeah, Magic has a lot of determinism in it. And it's one of the things that they actually talked about, I think, partly in that article about it being bad, is when you feel like you have no agency in a game, but you are now held hostage. Yeah, that wasn't that. So the way to that combo, that or there was many ways in which the decks could combo off. It could be at the end where it did stack its deck, and it would be deterministic. It also had many non-deterministic lines. It also could just draw those cards naturally and could combo at some point. But yeah, I think that it was that whole part of the article, which is it's so funny because it's a small part of the article, was very very. It was almost explicitly incorrect. It was like they got it like mixed up. So yeah, I don't think they actually meant to say it like that.
Because I read that and it's just like there has to be a better way to give that kind of setup and payoff to your game.
But
that cannot be the best way to do it.
You do have a good talking point, which is why does the Flesh and Blood community seem to, that was a massive announcement. I mean,
yeah,
a huge change to the game. But then the Flesh and Blood community in general, you don't see any pitchforks.
Like, they were chill.
Pretty
chill.
They
were chill. They were really chill.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my god, you can be like that? I didn't realize.
I think that when a publisher shows, and I'm not sold on this take, but I think when they bend the knee a little bit and cater to the audience a bit, like they start to feed the beast, and it's kind of hard to come back from that. Flesh and Blood has really never done that at all.
I guess it's a second hinder's credit. I don't think they. Well, no, they have, haven't they? They did the Gambit thing.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah,
they do it. They do it frequently. Like even when they fuck things up and they give stuff back, they compensate you. Yeah. Like it's. I don't think those things are bad, but you do. You
set the precedent of you being bullyable on social media.
You're empowering the people, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. Flesh and Blood tends to be a bit. It's a bit more tyrannical.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that, like, the biggest example of Flesh and Blood literally just being, like, a top-down run is that there's not a digital client that's official because James White literally just doesn't want one.
Well,
and it's like...
That's that. I think that they don't have the technical capability to create one.
There is no way that's possible.
No,
they make so much money.
Yeah, I know, bro. You would look at Second Dinner. They make a lot of money. They don't have the technical capability to do a lot of things. Let's be real. But I think that one of the guiding points behind Flesh and Blood and its creators is financial at this point, which is fine. It's a business. And I do think that Flesh and Blood, like, it can be created under the pretense that it was supposed to be a physically played game. There wouldn't be a digital client, but I do think that will change. I think Flesh and Blood will add a digital client when it's technically feasible, because their game is effectively being played online via a digital client. There is one. There is a third-party one for free. And no businessly sound person that loves money, which I definitely think James White is that kind of person, will let that happen for too long. So I think it's on the way.
It's one of those things where it's like, if it had even a fraction of the viewership of, like, Magic on Twitch and had a client that was good, I would legitimately consider playing it.
For sure. Yeah, it's a great game.
It's like I'm a grinder. That's what I do.
It is a game that with the hours you put in, you will generally reap back, which is it's a fun game to master. And it's definitely the best and worst part about Flesh and Blood, because you can master that game and you can feel very powerful, and the universe can feel right. When you're playing Magic the Gathering and you've been grinding the Pro Tour for 10 years and you go to an F&M to play a pre-release because your friends convinced you, your local friends that you play basketball with, they're like, hey, come to the pre-release. And you're like, okay, I don't really go to those, but okay, I'll go. And then you play against Timmy, who got brought by, their friend who's never played before, who ends up beating you because you draw no land. Something feels off in the universe. Flesh and Blood
happened to you?
No. No, but like something that like Flesh and Blood doesn't have that at all. You would just always lose every time. You'll never win.
I feel like that's kind of bad.
It is bad. It's very bad. It is definitely the worst thing about the game.
that's
How do you sell that to a casual player? Like, hey, come get your ass beat for months.
Hey, what's up, dude? You want to be my fucking fodder?
Yeah. Games feel close, though, until the person... They do. I mean, they look quantitatively close, but they're not at all. They're almost deterministic. Yeah, funny game. But yeah, Flesh and Blood did have its biggest ban announcement as it hit its 5-year mark, and they completely revamped an area of design, which was card advantage, which was my favorite. My favorite things in Flesh and Blood involves pretty much all the cards.
Yeah, no, the only thing you like doing is drawing 800 cards and then using all of them to beat your opponent to death. Not like in the game, like you put them in a sock, and because they weigh so much, you actually just beat your opponent to death.
I mean, that's honestly It's possible. I don't know what it is. The evolution of like what draws someone to a card game or what kind of archetypes they resonate with. I find over time, it's not true with every individual, but it's like staring into the abyss. You come in, you play some aggro, you're like, wow, this game is so interactive. I love mid-range mirrors, and then 10 years later, 15 years later, you're just a fucking piece of shit. You just like your prison, you like the prison lock people out. Your opponent takes a mulligan to 6. You're like, do it again. Go to 5. Go to 4. Go to 3. It's just
I don't want to play a game. I want to collect the points that
the
you
less
represent.
game you play, the better the experience is. I don't know what it is. It's like this.
I feel like there's a line though, because like I understand being like go to 5, go to 4, go to 3 for sure. I get that, but I don't think that lines up with a particular type of guy. I think that's just people who are more honest with themselves and people who are less honest with themselves. Yeah, everyone wants free wins, dog. That's awesome when you get free wins.
Yeah. And one of my favorite. I'm playing a lot of Vintage Cube recently, and that's fun. Getting my ass beat. Really, really tough. Tough format for sure. But
Good sell to you, right? Like you really got that sell of like, hey, come play Vintage Cube. You'll get your shit kicked in. It worked on you.
That's what I like.
It worked.
It's like, hey, would you like to come play this format that requires insane domain knowledge, where there's not great resources, that looks at 30 years of cards, where if you make any mistake, you're just going to fucking lose immediately. Also, people can just absolutely scam you with these overpowered cards. You want to come do that? So even if you draft your deck right, you'll probably still lose. I'm like, fuck, that sounds great.
Yeah, just like, hell yeah, brother. That's exactly what I want.
You know how many Black Lotuses I've had in my deck and then proceeded to go 1-2 or 0-3? I've 0-3 with the Black Lotus in my deck.
Ballpark how many you've played, first of all, then I'll guess the percentage.
Well, those numbers are the same. My word, dude.
Nice.
I'm just like, I'm so ass. I'm actually getting a little bit better. I've had a few 2-1s now. I've been watching a lot of Luis Scott Vargas draft. He's got a great YouTube channel. Literally every single night I end with it. I'm just obsessed with Vintage Cube right now. I just am, and I love that. I
have heard incredibly good things about that format.
It's the best format
on MTGO ever.
It's the best. You got to play on MTGO, which it's like a fucking abacus compared to MTGA. But yeah, it's
And MTGA isn't really a fucking, high-end computer.
No, sir, it is not. I cannot tell you how many games I lost to just having to learn MTGO. It was like a month of punting on MTGO. Or I'd pass my phase or like some shit. I was getting so irritated.
The sickest thing about MTGO is like the Nadu deck wouldn't fully work on there because it would just be too cumbersome to actually engage in it.
Yeah, so they added Thassa's Oracle.
You time out every time, and so you had to run a strictly worse version of the deck if you wanted to play it online.
Speaking of timing out, I started out in MTGO playing Dual Commander because I saw a couple videos about it, and I timed out for like the first couple weeks, like 50% of the time. I was playing a Tameo like a blue-green control deck, but I just fucking timed out, and it was just so irritating. Like I could not finish the games. Dual Commander is it's definitely hard to finish games. Like it's a best of 3 100-card deck, and you're talking about 2 control decks going against each other. But yeah, I fucking timed out so much, bro. Like it was, I had to learn through the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Snap. Let's go with decks. Any decks that are
do we have to talk about Snap?
I know it's fun to
we haven't had a good non-Snap episode in a while. No, for real.
Yeah,
we should actually talk.
What deck is kind of really standing out to you right now?
That's sort of the thing, is that it's hard to know a specific deck that is standing out to me, because it's like there are a bunch of questions being asked and answered in weird ways, right? Things aren't like happening where it's like, this is happening, ergo some other card is now amazing. It's more like cards are getting moved up because of that. An example of this would be Man Thing, right? You look at every Wiccan deck, they play so many 1s, 2s, and 3s because they want to be a Wiccan deck. Man Thing comes down, he's like a 4/15 or whatever. And it's just like the biggest guy of all time. He's just enormous and huge. And so you're seeing more Man Thing mid-range type decks. Like one thing that I've seen a lot of is like Man Thing US Agent decks, because again, that's very anti-Wiccan. You have US Agent for like their 3 big cards, and then you have Man Thing for the entire rest of their deck, and they just can't compete on points with those 2 cards. And so like there's a lot of like small things happening in that space where it's like people are metagaming against the sort of, I guess you describe them as the decks that say no, right? Like another deck that Man Thing is really good against is you trying to Ultron me? Get the fuck out of here. You cannot Ultron me. It doesn't work. Those things have 0 power now. And then by the same token, it's like, okay, you're going to Ultron me. That means you're stacking Blue Marvel and Ultron in the same lane. You're stacking Sandman and Ultron in the same lane. US Agent plays for 211, 215 there, right? And so you have these like mid-range decks that are these like Affliction mid-range decks, but they're not really like Affliction mid-range decks because Affliction is good. They're Affliction mid-range decks because those 2 cards specifically are good against the Wiccan decks and the Sandman decks. And that's a really interesting development for me. That's like a very, very hyper-specifically metagamed thing that it's one of those things where it's like, I genuinely don't know if this percolates down the ladder because it only happens if everyone is playing those decks, right? And so the more people are just playing random stuff, the more these decks just get like, oh, well, I guess I'm dead, right? So I had one on my list that was like a super giant version of that. And a bunch of my friends at the high level have been playing that and been like, this is awesome, this rocks, this is super cool. And the super giant there, for the record, is also anti-Sandman, but also anti-bounce. It's so you don't have to be a Sandman deck, but you can be a deck that beats bounce. That's what the super giant is trying there to do. And so then you have this deck that, again, it's like this hyper metagamed beast where it's like you have good lines into Eliath Wiccan decks, you have good lines into Sandman decks, you have good lines into bounce decks, and then if you run into like, I don't know, Phoenix Force, you just die immediately. You run into like Mr. Negative, and it's just like, oh man, okay. I mean, like you can deal with that stuff because again, US Agent's really strong, good against Iron Man stuff, but it's like there's this thing where it's like these hyper metagame decks that are good in like a very specific metagame. A lot of the time, the decks I talk about are good across the board. And I think the 3 lists I listed, Sandman, Wiccan, Bounce, those are like the generically applicable good decks. And then there's like the decks people are playing to beat up on those decks, and I don't know if they're as generically applicable.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good analysis. How do you think that Madam Web's going to shake things up?
Okay. I was incredibly scared of her. And then I was like, okay, Taskmaster, I'm probably no longer worried she's going to be unbeatable. Right? With the Taskmaster going to 6, I am now no longer worried about 64 power in 2 lanes on the final turn. Which is, like, I get it. There's ways to deal with that. Eliath, Sandman. I get it that you can, like, clog them up. All that makes sense to me. That is still just, like, a thing that is too many numbers for free. That's just, it's too many numbers to not be vulnerable to Shang-Chi. It's too many numbers to not be vulnerable to Shadow King. You can't have that in your game. I'm sorry, you just can't. It has all the downside of Hela with none of the cool stuff about Hela. Where it's just like, oh, you can't interact with this? Guess you die. Not fun, not good. With Taskmaster out of the picture, the deck probably has to be more face up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be enough for it to not be the worst decision they've ever made in terms of making a card.
Well, I'm interested to see as we progress through this season. Anyway, that will be it for this week's episode. If you want to get your question read out in next week's Bend&Snap, so you can get us to shut up and stop with our intrusive questions. It's just a comment on YouTube. Let us know you've been banging the keys.
Do you think we talked about Flesh and Blood more or Snap more this episode?
Well, you got to put UFC in there as well.
Right. I guess if you split it into a pie chart, what do you think that pie chart looked like?
Well, do you count the intro as it's the thing? It's like there's like going to be some somewhat ambiguous areas that you got to attribute to one of those 3, and if we attribute them all to Marvel Snap, I'd say probably Marvel Snap.
Interesting. What if we made a 4th category?
Wait, did you say you said Flesh and Blood or Marvel Snap? But we also talked about UFC and Vintage Cube.
No. I agreed that we had to put UFC into the pie chart.
Okay.
But I would say these are the categories: Flesh and Blood, Marvel Snap, UFC, Other. What's the pie chart look like?
I would say 50% Marvel Snap.
Oh, I'm feeling under 50. I'm gonna go an under on that over/under proposition right there. That's an
committed Marvel Snap host. I would never let something like that happen.
That.
Oh, we also talked about fucking Elden Ring lore and Alien Romulus.
Yeah. We're very dedicated podcasters.
Yeah.
We do
Apologies.
what we do.
Apologies.
Sometimes I think that like both of us like this podcast because it's the place that we get to.
That is
exist.
okay.
Like,
I've said those words to people in real life before.
it's just nice.
I've said those
It's
words.
just nice.
Yeah, I wonder if people think that I'm this unprofessional by default. Actually, no. Actually, no. This is only
I actually am. So like, that's a big departure from the
y'all
norm.
are just held hostage as
Yeah.
listeners of the Snapshot. But,
It must be so frustrating to like be a listener and you like not to like gas myself up or anything like
Yeah.
that. But like you listen through like you like turn it off 20 minutes in because we start talking about other stuff and then you miss like the 5 minutes of incisive meta commentary at the end and you're just like fuck, man.
So I have to read a lot of Snapshot comments every week, and I would say so. We say that a lot. We will like get to an end of the episode, and then we'll like meme a little bit about how much Marvel Snap was talked about. I would say we would have like a ratio of 8-1 on comments, for like 8 being solidarity with I think it's hilarious. I love when you guys talk about the UFC, etc., etc. Like, I love that you guys go off topic. There's the one person who's like, holy shit. Like, I cannot do this. Like, I'm just trying to listen to Marvel Snap, and I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, man. They're like, you gotta feel bad. You gotta feel bad a little bit, right? Where it's just like, you know, technically this is a Marvel Snap podcast in the gaming section of your podcast platform of choice. Functionally, I am no longer sure that's what it is.
Hey, we did like 2 months there. 2 months, maybe 2.5.
This is like we had a lot of Marvel Snap in the last.
Yeah, we went.
Like I think the other thing for me is like it's hard, right, to talk about the meta right now when there's a card that could come out that as scary as Madam Web is, where it's just like if that deck is good, I don't see how a Wiccan deck beats that in 10 million years.
Also,
I have no idea.
I kind of wish we did have like tournaments to talk about, or like high level events, because we could, theoretically metagame for those events. We could see how our predictions, how they panned out, and that's what I'm used to talking about when it comes to card games.
Yeah.
So when you're always kind of just like speculating on the, the very subjective ladder meta, it's like, I don't know, you only have so much to go off sometimes.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing I would like to bring up is, in fairness to me, the Flesh and Blood ban announcement is actually just a really interesting thing that I was very struck by, not just like the tone in which they were able to talk to, by the way in which the community reacted to that tone. And damn, maybe we need to build Glenn Jones and Ivory Tower.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about like what creates a great system, and like whether it is a collective, like whether it includes community feedback and you should be listening to the community, or if we could swing, if you swing all the way over, which Flesh and Blood isn't quite there. It's not even close, to be honest, but it's way more there than Second Dinner is, where you just have one, and you have effectively one, it's a collective and group of people as well. One leader that has a vision for the game that will adhere to that vision no matter what. Because, Blizzard infamously said, you think you want it, but you don't. And then we turned out that, people, what they actually wanted, which was, I think, classic WoW at that point, was something they wanted. But I do think that the consumer is often...
card gamers.
Yeah, the consumer's often wrong, about what they want. Especially when it comes to card games. You're talking about, like, very subjective terms on, like, what people enjoy and do not enjoy. Because when it comes to a zero-sum game of winning and losing, it's like how you win actually matters, and if you can't satisfy everybody's need to always want to win more, unless you are, I guess, Marvel Snap, because you just feed them bots. But
right, like that's the thing. Everyone thinks that their opinions are divorced from them winning and losing, and everyone is wrong about that. Yeah. Every single person is like, I am the unbiased observer who is able to offer this feedback because I know that my feedback is different from just me being mad that I lost. And they're not. That's not true. They are just mad that they lost. Like,
I think there's nuance on both sides of that, but yeah, it's hard to balance in a way when there is that much bias in regards to winning and losing. But yeah,
Yeah,
Flesh and
it's hard
Blood.
to
Flesh and Blood
balance
has
our
this. It does
community.
have the ivory tower.
Yes.
It does have the ivory tower, which is it's been one of my least favorite things about the game sometimes. But it's also I think it's why the game is like if you can have confidence in the game at any point, I think you can hold that confidence for a long time because it never changes, right? It's always just that we know what's right, and to an extent, it is a little bit, you know. If you don't think
I
so,
am
fuck you.
the platonic philosopher king of Flesh and Blood,
Yeah.
and you can take it or leave it.
Yeah. To be fair, I do think that Flesh and Blood also does listen to a good amount of community feedback. They just don't really engage with the community, which I think is the key. So they might, while they might see the ideas, talk about the ideas, and consider them as valid, they really don't engage with them, especially on something like Twitter or in any form of like, I don't know, the way like Second Dinner does, where they, even if they don't, there's not like someone from Second Dinner talking to you on Twitter, like their actions kind of show like, oh, they kind of bent the knee to this one. Flesh and Blood didn't do that.
Brian, I mean, I think actually it's worth mentioning that I think the balance team specifically, Glenn Jones specifically,
Yeah.
the card guys never been.
No.
The
Well,
card guys are like, we actually know better
Yeah.
all the time.
I think Glenn
You guys
Jones
want us to get rid of Loki? Fuck you.
Yeah.
And
Glenn
then
Jones
they get rid of Loki and it's all fine.
I think Glenn Jones is like clearly very competent, almost like hilariously
Yes.
so.
Yes.
Which is funny because he's the only whenever I shouldn't say we, whenever I talk about the incompetence of Second Dinner as a company, especially when it comes to execution of things like leagues, Deadpool's Diner, etc. Somehow somebody always like throws a stray at like as if Glenn Jones is even in the universe of that conversation. It's like I know he works at the company, but like there couldn't be anything farther from what I'm talking about. It's like that's
The
like the
card
one
guys-
guy. It's like
God, there's like he's so unbelievably good at his job. It's kind of insane. I don't know how one guy can be that good at his job.
yeah.
Like,
the balance of Marvel Snap is pretty good. Which is funny because the worst part about it is it's so good that it butts up against the monetization system because you want to
Yes.
have every single card.
Yes. Like that's like the issues. Everyone's issue with the balance team is actually an issue with the monetization.
Yeah.
Every issue anyone has, it has nothing to do with the actual balance of anything, and has everything to do with the expense of adjusting to a balance that changes off.
Yeah, I would think it's more like the majority. I think sometimes people have issues with like play patterns, whether it's like hella like
Sure,
being
okay.
dominant and you're like, fuck this. But
Yeah,
yeah, the majority
Hela,
of it is
Loki,
monetization based.
Galactus. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Poor one out for the boy. Anyway.
But also they've just consistently killed those cards. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you hate this shit? It's
I
dead.
know. Yeah.
This shit's
It's
gone.
dead now.
It's fucking gone, bro. I remember having an argument with people over whether 2/2 Loki was going to be enough, and I was like, that seems like enough to me, and I was wrong because it was so much more than enough.
Yeah.
I was like, that might balance the card, and it's just like digging it into a hole.
I'm not gonna lie, when they first nerfed Loki to that 3/5, or
Mhm.
like, with the draw card, and they changed the way it worked, I was like, oh, this card. My first thought. Don't get me wrong, like my first thought, and I think a lot of other people may have also had this first thought, but
They won't admit it.
They're not
but-
gonna admit it. I was like, that card's fucking dead.
Yeah.
It was the opposite.
No, they won't admit it. They won't admit it. No one will ever
Nobody's
admit
gonna-
it, even though it was the prevailing opinion at the time. No one will ever admit to having held it. I didn't think it was dead, but I thought it was like, oh, this is way worse. It wasn't at all. It was
No.
like a buff.
Yeah.
Like, that's
That was like
Yeah.
legendarily incorrect. Anyway, if y'all enjoy this podcast, then one thing you do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps so much. The video version of this on YouTube at youtube.com/@the_snapshot. Twitter is BrentAPG, CamBestMS. Solidarity is the word of the pod. If you've been forebanging the keys, let us know. And Cam is streaming on Twitch in the weekdays, on the weekends, sometimes in the evenings.
in the evenings. That is the times.
You need,
That is the specific times.
You need like a forebanging in the keys emote.
I am currently working with my girlfriend to get new sub badges.
Yeah.
because she's a little bit of an artist, so
Okay.
we're working on that. We'll see about a 4-bang into the key smoke maybe after that.
What if it's like the sub badges are just like varying like colors of some guy on a jet ski in the Keys somewhere? It's just like progressively more Floridian.
I'm imagining a guy on a jet ski, but the water is a spotlight cache.
Yeah, I could see that. You could also make. Yeah. The jet ski could also be a modified spotlight cap, but honestly, any
No, like I'm like the water. It's like shimmery and everything,
Okay.
but there's like a question mark and it's purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just man, that's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
it.
Anyway,
If you're a graphic designer,
hit
us up.
Yeah, hit us up. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.